Welcome back to the Bounce, brought to you by Bite Size Sports. I am Kev, and with me today is the Nick Stop Keebler himself. James is not with us; he's got some things to take care of. But don't worry, you'll get his thoughts on Dame to the Bucks next week. There's no way he's not going to talk about it. He was trying very hard to get a pre-recorded video out for all of you. But in the meantime, Keebler, how are you doing? I know Dame was probably not going to go to the Knicks outside, but you did report you had a source at one point. It might have been a dream.
Yeah.
But how you feeling? You holding up okay after this news that Dame's going to Milwaukee of all places?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in a I'm fine with it, but at the same time, my hopes and dreams for Giannis are probably short-lived now. Now that he has that number one punch. I mean, Giannis is a number one punch, but having that guy that can create space on the floor to give you your room to do what you do best, he's probably going to sign that extension with Milwaukee. They asked him to get a good player. They went out and got a top 3 point guard in the league. So we'll see what happens at the end of the day. It's still a business. He was saying that like Drew Holiday's my brother. I effing love him. Love his family. He brought me a championship. So I don't know if he's going to be upset with them trading Drew. Probably not because they just got Dame. Probably yes and no. But
I you might there might be something there. So I just want to mention that I read a report on Twitter that the Bucks did not consult Giannis about the Dame trade specifically because they knew that Drew Holiday was going to be involved and they didn't want him to object. So I don't know. I wanted to mention that while we were talking about it because there might be something there. It might be, but then at the same time, careful what you wish for. You
yeah.
just might get it, and you can't acquire a player like Dame and not give up something of value. So, hopefully he's happy about it. What a world would that be if right after basically demanding help, they go get him help, and he's like, "Well, I didn't want you to get rid of Drew, though," and then now he doesn't want to resign because
Yeah.
his best friend's gone. But
I mean, I would hope that's the case personally, but John, don't you have a honeymoon to be at right now?
congratulations again, John. Yeah, he's surprised you guys aren't watching this nail biter. Oh man, I might have to get someone else to make the Thursday night bite size picks so that we can our race car can drive a winner. Pick the Packers again. It's not great. I'm about to go to
Yeah,
one and
no,
three.
I was gonna go heavy on the Packers to lose by like a lot because he hasn't faced a good defense yet. Him being Jordan Love, so now he finally is, and now it's like bad. But yeah, I kind of expected the Lions to narrowly win today.
You know what I did not expect was the details of this Dame Lillard trade. So I'm going to pull it up here.
It was very interesting to say the least. I did not expect the Suns to get in on that first. And then just
Right.
the players involved. I can't really see that just because it's so zoomed out on my screen, but it's fine.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll read it out for the audio listeners as well. So the Bucks, of course, received Dame. The Blazers received Drew Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Kamara, a 2029 first round pick, and 2 pick swaps. The Suns receive Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. Uh, the real winner of this trade is Tyler Hero, John
It is
says.
Tyler Hero.
Tyler Hero is the modern day Miles Turner. Poor guy cannot avoid a trade rumor to save his life at this point. But
Speaking of Miles Turner, I saw this post. I think it was by like Bleacher Report, and it said
of
longest tenured
course,
players on their team. And then Miles Turner was like the sixth longest tenured on his team at like 8 seasons. And then someone in the comments, which I agree with, it's like he's still a pacer. He's in trade rumors literally every single year.
even still now, even after signing an extension, there's a lot of Lakers fans that just seem to think the Pacers are dying to get rid of Miles Turner for some reason. There,
I'll
it,
give
it
you Mitch Robinson and a pick if you want.
there you go. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're safe there. I'm I was happy to see that the Pacers didn't get into this. We'll talk about they're already into some Drew Holiday rumors. We'll talk about the long list of Drew Holiday suitors. But looking at this, I mean, who do you want to talk about first? I believe that each of these teams deserves a bit of a breakdown from us, or at least I have plenty of thoughts on each of them. So we can really
I
start wherever. Keebler, where would you want to start?
I mean, we can save the Trailblazers for last because I feel like they're like the main focal point of this entire thing. I think we can start with the Suns if you want.
Yeah.
Um, I like the move for the Suns. Surprisingly, you have DeAndre Ayton, who's been a locker room cancer for you his entire career. Behind the scenes, and then you go out and swap him for a guy essentially who gives you more spacing on the floor. I'd say pretty close to equal defense. Still can run a good pick and roll, um, and things of that nature. So, what did it say the Suns got in return?
The Suns got Nurkic, Grayson Allen, and then Nasir Little and Keon Johnson.
Yeah, Grayson Allen. As a Duke fan myself, I know what Grayson Allen provides to you, and that's like pretty solid perimeter defense, which I'll get into when we talk about the Bucks.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good bench piece to have for your team, especially given now how your starting lineup's going to be like Beal, Booker, KD, Nurkic. I forget who their point guard is going to be, but maybe Grayson Allen if they go that route. But
Yeah, I've seen speculation that it might be Beal that plays the point this year, and then yeah. So do they have somebody playing the four, or do they just have KD play the four and then go Grayson
yeah,
and Booker? But yeah, it is a nice piece. They got some bench depth. I think because of injuries, I think Nurkic is a bit of a downgrade from Aiton. But you mentioned the most important part. Uh, he's going to be a lift in the locker room at the very least because Aiton didn't want to be there anymore. And Nurkic, what I will say, if he's able to return to form, pre-injury form, I don't want to give the Blazers too much credit because they did kind of fumble this whole Lillard situation in multiple ways, but there's a reason they were so bullish on the idea that Lillard and Nurkic could be something because a couple of years ago, before the string of injuries, he was looking like a talented front court player and quite a presence. So if they can get some of that back, then it's going to be a great move for them. But yeah, in a locker room sense, it's definitely addition by subtraction. I don't know, and it's hard to put a value on Aiton's rebounding ability because there's also been several highlights of him clearly giving up on plays because of how unhappy he was in Phoenix. So Grayson Allen is one of those players I think a lot of fans hate, but as soon as he's on your team, you like him
yeah, exactly.
because yeah, you don't mind those little things that annoy you about his competitive spirit, and it might have some plays that, looking back on it, you might, I don't. I'll use the word dirty just because of a lack of another one is coming to mind. But there have been some of those maybe in a gray area where you're like, all right, that's on the technical side or something. But he's a good open shooter. He's a decent defender and he's going to be a nice rotation piece for a Suns team that was really short on its bench. Do you have any thoughts on Nasir Little or Keon Johnson as part of this trade for the Suns?
I feel like it's just additional pieces that might pick up some rotational minutes. I don't think it's going to be anything like crazy because they still have like Bull that they have to give minutes to as a big on that team. They still have there's like two more guys that I feel like are going to be in front of them, but I like Nazir Little. I'm not as familiar with Keon Johnson, but I feel like those are guys that aren't gonna. They're going to be getting like more toward the back of the rotation minutes, in my opinion. But
I agree. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to switch to Dame next. So I'm going to drop the screen share till we go back to the Blazers, and we'll pull it back up for that. We got some new chatters in. Justin Herbert is in the building. What is up, brother? You are here in time because we are going to talk about Drew here later, and I'm certain that we're going to talk about your boys as well. Welcome, Nate. What is up, sir? Dame and Giannis, fire emojis. That's what we're about to be talking about. And of course, he is dancing on Green Bay's grave as we speak. But yeah, Dame and Giannis Keebler, I know you have some thoughts. You've alluded to them already as far as the defensive end. So I'm just going to give you the mic here. What are your thoughts on Milwaukee's part in this deal? They got Dame, they got rid of Drew, Grayson Allen, and some picks. So how you feeling about that?
So here's my opinion on Milwaukee. I feel like you still won the trade offensively, but defensively you lost it, and it's not even close. Your rotation is going to look something along the lines of Damian Lillard, Pat Connaughton, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Brooke Lopez, and Bobby Portis. Three of those guys I just named, you're going to have to hope that they stay healthy in being Brooke Lopez, who I think is already like 36. You have Dame, who's dealt with an abdomen injury the past 2 years, and you have Chris Middleton, who just seems to get a random injury every other night. With that, you give up one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA in Drew Holiday, who manages to stay healthy and still give you 20 and 8 a night on the offensive side of the ball. And then Grayson Allen, who off the bench is one of probably the best bench defenders in the NBA. I know some people might think that's questionable because of how dirty he is. But I don't know. I feel like you're definitely adding that extra element to your offense that you need to clear the paint for Giannis. Now you're adding a deep ball threat when Damian Lillard can shoot from 30 consistently. Um, but at the same time, while you're adding points, you're giving the other team points to drop on your head. So that's just my thoughts about it. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't disagree with that. I mean, that is a very key component here that they're going to have to change their identity a bit, I would think. When I think of the Bucks, I think of a tough defensive grinded out team that where yeah, Drew Holiday might score 40 on you, but even when that happens, there's probably a handful of steals involved or some defensive pressures that lead to some bad shots, fast breaks off rebounds. And I don't know now what I will say what I think about is a nice a pick and roll between, Dame and Giannis sounds phenomenal. Sounds like it'd be very tough to beat. I can't wait to do that in 2K. But I wonder, and especially with the injuries, because you could also throw Pat Connaughton on that list after last year. I hope it's not going to be a recurring thing. But the reality is all of this team's best players, not named Bobby Portis, have injury history at this point. Everybody that's left in the last few years has dealt with some injuries, or the Brooke Lopez, who hasn't been banged up that much, but as you mentioned, he's old at this point.
Yeah.
And that always becomes a risk. So this went from, in my opinion, last year before those injuries, one of, if not the deepest rosters in the NBA to a team that now is a little less deep, but if they are healthy, I mean, that's the thing. 2 stars of that magnitude, they get the right matchups in the playoffs. I mean, they absolutely could make a run. I'm going to be worried about their health because I don't think they're going to be the number 1 seed in the East with this. I don't think this is the kind of roster that can grind out a bunch of regular season wins because of what you mentioned. They're going to be missing that defensive pressure. That's the stuff that can really win you some games against some lesser teams in the regular season. Get out to a big lead because of some turnovers. You can kind of cruise. If they have to deal with load management from Dame, all of a sudden they're much thinner. So then it's Giannis with even less around him. So how many of those games will they win? I'm not worried about the Bucks. It'll be interesting to see how they look, and to see if they end up adding any other rotational pieces. Maybe there's some more veterans out there. I know this is a joke, but I know Isaiah Thomas quote tweeted something about, "Hey, you guys need a backup point guard." So, unlike what Evan Turner previously stated, and he might have been right a week or two ago, but now I do think there'd be plenty of veterans that would go work out with Giannis and his brothers for a 1-year deal to go try to win a title. So maybe they're not done yet after making this move. I don't know.
I think it'd be cool to see Melo be a bench presence for that team. I know he retired, but we've seen crazier things happen. When he
I'd
can
love
still
it.
give you like 15 a night off the bench, he's not going to be again. It's going to be an offensive piece. It's not going to be a defensive piece.
Yeah, he's not gonna help that perimeter defense, but, if you
But
need
when you
some
take one of the
scoring.
best scorers of all time, throw him on a roster surrounded by Dame, Giannis, you can treat him as like your like third option off the bench. I feel like that'd be pretty solid, but just a hopeful dream that Melo comes back on a team.
I'll always be rooting for it until it's, well, as long as LeBron's in the league, I'll say that. I'll continue to root for Melo getting one more shot at a ring. I don't care if he's,
Taj
playing
Taj
playing
Gibson
8
is still
minutes.
Taj Gibson is still on a roster. How is Carmelo Anthony not on a roster? I don't get it.
It's bonkers. I think it's I don't know who spoke to it recently, but someone said something along those lines on and I think it was a current player on an NBA podcast saying that only 12 teams in the league are actively trying to win, and
Oh,
those other go
that
ahead.
was Jabari Parker.
Oh yeah, it was Jabari Parker. Okay, who has had some hot takes, I would think. Like he's also kind of someone who might just be salty that he's no longer in the league, but I think he brings up some valid points about not everyone's trying to win. We've talked about that on this show before where what's then your incentive to pay this veteran who now has to have you have to pay him the vet minimum, stuff like that. You can just go take a prospect who maybe has some potential, probably will help you lose these games so you get a better draft pick. There's just not the incentive that there used to be to have that veteran presence, that locker room leader. I mean, I think it should still be there. I just think a lot of these GMs are short sighted, which is fair. They don't have long their careers don't have long shelf lives. They've got to turn these teams around quickly, and tanking seems to be the way to do it. Which is why I think we've seen a lot of these more uh, reserve type players have their careers ended a little prematurely, and we see them go overseas and play, or you see them in the big three hoping to get a tryout. Which, by the way, speaking of tryouts, before we dive back into this trade, we can report that the Warriors have moved on from Dwight Howard. I know we here at the Bounce we're very scared that all of that Dwight Howard shade we've been throwing was going to come back to bite us when he won a title with the Warriors. But have no fear, fellow Bounce fans. All right, so that's the thoughts on the Bucks. Let me pull it back up because this is where
The
it gets
Trailblazers just
fun.
a ton of stuff.
Yeah, go ahead. Start wherever you would like with the Blazers, because I there's a lot to talk about with what is already on the roster with Scoot Henderson. I think Drew Holiday will probably be his own little segment here at a certain point. But have at it. What are your thoughts on the Blazers haul? Does this feel like, given the situation, does this feel like it was like? Would you be disappointed as a Blazers fan? Is this all they got for Dame, or was this a decent return given the scenario?
I feel like it was a decent return because I can't see it, but they got Drew Holiday, Ayton, two firsts, right? Two firsts, two swaps. Um,
Yes.
and
One
like
first, two swaps. Sorry, one first, two swaps. Holiday, Aiton, and Tumani Kamara. Kamara,
okay, so
Kamara. Yeah,
I'm
don't know
I'm
about
not
Tumani.
going I'm not gonna include him probably in anything I say in this. So you get Drew and Ayton, which on the surface is very good, along with a first and two swaps. I think that's a pretty solid return, especially if you're thinking about flipping Drew into more assets for what you need. You don't need more guards on that team. You need more forwards and power forwards. With the way that roster is constructed, I think it's good that you get a first. Ayton was the first overall pick, right?
I can't remember. He was. I don't remember what pick he was. I'll look that up real quick.
Okay,
Um,
I think he was.
but yeah, he was definitely a top guy. Pulling it up. This segment brought to you by Basketball Reference, not sponsored, but it's a hell of a website. Why is this not more readily available? There it is. First round over one pick. Yep, 2018. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
so you get a first round pick from 5 years ago. That has shown glimpses of being great in a fact of where he enjoys playing. Essentially, so I feel like if you can get him acclimated with Portland while you still have him on contract for I think it's what 3 or 4 years. It's a good solid piece to have, especially in the pick and roll when you're going to be developing guards like Anthony Simons, Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson. They have a lot of guard talent, and I feel like having that, like, it's weird to say, but that Trailblazers team is young. So to have that like veteran center um, on your team that still has a lot of upside is going to be very valuable for their development. Um, Aside from that, I think that yeah, flip Drew into another young forward. RJ Barrett would be more than happy with going to Portland if you want to go that route. Um, but what was I going to say? I have a 3-team trade in mind that I'll talk about later once we're after this segment. But
Okay.
it involves the Pacers too. So
Let's go. Maybe, maybe. But
um,
yeah,
but yeah, that's I feel like it has a lot of upside, but we'll see what happens with the Blazers.
I agree with you there. I like what you said about as long as Aiton is happy where he's at and he's going to be a high effort player, he's going to have a lot of opportunities. You mentioned some talented guards, lots of pick and roll opportunity, lots of cleaning it up on the offensive glass as well. Because although they're talented guards, they are young guards, so he's going to have a chance to clean it up there as well. As you mentioned, as Lee mentioned here, welcome Lee. Glad to have you here. I think we're all under the impression that the Blazers are not keeping Holiday. There is a pretty long list of teams interested. I know Justin Herbert's beloved 76ers are on that list, and that's probably what we're going to talk about right after this segment is what else the Blazers could turn Drew Holiday into. And before we do that, I'll just throw my extra little thoughts here on the Blazers. Yeah, I think they have uh, despite the scenario, right? Obviously, they fumbled the situation in getting here. But with Scoot Henderson, I've been high on Shaden Sharp since the draft last year. Been very high. I think he could be a great player. We'll see if that pans out. Um, I believe they also have Jeremy Grant at the 4 for next year.
Yep,
Um,
three or four. It's one of them.
yeah, which wherever they're gonna end up playing him. So, I mean, I don't expect this team to be a bubble team in year 1, but depending on what they get for Drew Holiday, which could be a decent haul. I know there are a lot of teams that think very highly of him. Pacers coach, easy for me to say, pal, Rick Carlisle,
Love,
called
love your
called
Carlisle.
so do I, and he loves Drew Holiday. He thinks he's a top 5 player. There's a soundbite out there somewhere. You can go find it. He loves some Drew Holiday. So they could, to the right playoff team, I think Drew is maybe worth a first round pick, maybe a couple of picks. It might not be a couple of firsts, but maybe a first or a couple of seconds. I have no idea what the market is going to draw from him, but I think it will be nice for a rebuilding Blazers team who you mentioned don't really need his services. And there are a lot of teams out there that do. So, what do you say, Keebler? You want to start talking about the Drew Holiday of it all? You mentioned having a potential trade. There's a Herbert also, I think, has a 3-way trade in mind. But let's get with you. Let's go to yours first, Keebler. What do you have in mind for Drew Holiday?
So like the basis, I guess you could say it's not like in full detail, but I have a 3-team trade between the Pacers, the Knicks, and the Trailblazers. Um, I was thinking something along the lines of Drew Holiday and Miles Turner to the Knicks. Um, Sending whoever wants Fournier's expiring contract to the one of them, giving up Mitchell Robinson, giving up RJ Barrett, um, and then going like with a Knicks from the Knicks perspective. Obviously, I can give that side a little better. Going with a starting 5 of Brunson, Drew, Hart, Randall, Miles Turner, and going with something along those lines. For the Pacers, I know we just gave you guys, or you just gave us 2 second-round picks. We can probably send those back to you if you want them back. Um, if Miles Turner were to come here. But yeah, that's like about where I was at in terms of I don't know what we'd give back the Pacers. That's the only problem. Maybe like Grimes or RJ, something in that range. But it would probably go with Mitch and a pick going to the Pacers for and probably Fournier for Miles Turner, and then in that same trade, RJ Barrett and a pick or two to the Blazers for Drew Holiday.
I stand with Lee on this one that Pacers are not giving up Miles Turner. I hope not. No, I mean, I can understand, especially on the Knicks side, wanting that. I mean, and if it goes that way, that would be a great haul for you guys. I love me some Miles Turner. Now that he has re-signed, I hope that this is where he stays. But you know, I get it because I also one of the tweets I put up was Drew for Buddy straight up. You know, how about that? You know, that's a that's a win-win to a Pacers fan. But doesn't help the Blazers much at all. But that was where I was wondering if there could be some sort of three-team dynamic going, because now you also have Buddy Hield and the Pacers aren't able to come to terms with him. He's another player that, not for the same reasons, but there are a lot of teams in similar situations that would probably love the services of Buddy Hield. So what would be, a potential three-team trade? I don't really have any trades in mind, especially three-teamers. I hadn't put any of those together. I do, you know, I do like the idea of Fournier getting a second shot somewhere. I know his time in New York hasn't been great, and he is definitely an inconsistent player, inconsistent shooter. I'm not going to try to oversell him here, but I would love to see him get an opportunity somewhere. I don't know how much value he has, but he could be a floor spacer to the right team.
Do you want to give him a second shot on the Pacers?
I don't, but depending on I would have to take more than that, but if he came in a situation where the Pacers have to get rid of Buddy, depending on who all goes, if there's a spot for him, I don't mind having a guy like Fournier out there that can shoot. I think the Pacers are in another situation where they're kind of set in the backcourt, and I think that's one of the reasons Buddy wants to go. So I don't know, it's almost overkill. I'd love, because Buddy Hield's a great shooter, so I'd love him to just be happy with his role and want to take more money and stay in Indiana, and then I don't have to think about this. But so I know that the Pacers have been speculated, the Knicks have been speculated for Drew Holiday, the Sixers have been speculated. Here's I think Justin Herbert's got a trade in here. I haven't read this one yet, so we'll see. He says Sixers get Drew and Norman Powell. Clippers get Harden, Tucker, and Korkmaz. Nurkic back to the Blazers. I don't know if that Terrence
Nurkic to the Clippers.
Oh, okay. Oh, All right. Blazers get Terrence Mann, Bones Highland, 2 firsts from Philly, and Clippers, and then Batum, Jaden Springer. There's a lot of names going back and forth. I mean, that's another one. Yeah, if you're a Sixers fan, you gotta love that. I love some Norman Powell. You got any thoughts on this one, Keebler?
Just to put Daryl Morey's value into perspective, I know I poked fun at this last podcast, but for Tobias Harris alone, Daryl Morey wanted Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and a first-round pick. So I feel like in Daryl Morey's eyes, to give up one of the greatest scorers of all time, even though we know what Harden is and what he can produce now, I don't think he's just going to take Drew and Norman Powell and give up PJ Tucker and Korkmaz in that same thing. So you just got to know like the GM you're dealing with. I don't think it's a bad trade. I think it's pretty decent, but in Daryl Morey's eyes, he would probably just hang up the phone in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, those are a couple of his guys too. Well, Harden's not anymore, but Tucker definitely is. No, I that's who else we've got, because I do think the Sixers are in the mix. Let's see. I'm actually going to pull it up. I've got the tab pulled up. We'll see. Just if you just search Drew Holiday on Twitter, you see a lot of names. And here's that very first report. Bucks did not consult Giannis about trading Drew Holiday to avoid conflict. That's the best way to avoid conflict, guys, is to just put it off for later and just, deal with it later. That conflict, maybe it'll just never rear its head. That's always the smart way to handle that. But let's see. There were not just the names that we've mentioned. There have been some other, oh wow, even the Warriors. I've heard that one. If the Warriors are willing to retrade Chris Paul, they might be in the Drew Holiday race. That, to me, that's laughable. If, of course, the Warriors are willing to trade Chris Paul if they can get Drew Holiday. Am I the crazy one here, Keebler?
No, I just don't think that that'll fit. I don't think it'll be great. Because you'd be rocking with a lineup of approximately Curry, Drew Holiday, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond, who have an average height of like 6'4" in that lineup. So I just don't think defensively it'd be worth it to go for that when you can keep Kevin Looney, because I know Clay's not coming off the bench, Drew's not coming off the bench. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just not logistical for the Warriors, essentially.
That's a good point. I would think so. If I'm the coach, I wouldn't be opposed to having Clay Thompson come off the bench. I think he's one of those. He's shown it. What was it like the one several years ago? He had like 60 points on 11 dribbles or something. If there's ever a
Yeah.
guy who can come in on shorter minutes and have an impact, it's Clay Thompson when he's on. But also, he may not be that Clay Thompson anymore, and I think Drew Holiday is probably the better player. At least that's if I had to pick between the two, that's probably who I'm starting. But yeah, I agree with you. Like you were saying about the GMs, you have to know your personnel, and there's no way. I mean, look at how well Clay Thompson handled sharing any playing time with Jordan Poole. I mean, before Jordan Poole was public enemy number one, Clay Thompson was throwing literal tantrums on the court if the ball wasn't getting passed to him in time. It was honestly, it was a little shocking at times to see him just toss his hands in the air and then the ball get passed to him. He's not even looking anymore. Like,
Yeah.
um, clear signs of frustration. So NBA Central says the Lakers, Clippers, Heat, Bulls, Celtics, and Sixers are expected to show interest. So some new names in there. Any of those you want to talk about? I mean, the
I
Heat makes sense, but who else you got?
I think the Bulls would be a perfect fit, to be honest. Um, what they're lacking and what they've shown that they're lacking is a primary ball facilitator. Um, they have Lonzo, but they don't have Lonzo, essentially. When Lonzo was healthy, they were one of the top teams in the East. Um, After he got hurt, it went downhill really fast. I think adding an all-star caliber point guard to Vucevic, Levine, and DeRozan, and taking some weight off their shoulders while having someone who can defend the perimeter and again give you 20 and 8 a night, still be an all-star like he was last year, um, and play that kind of role would be very beneficial for a team like that. Again, the Heat would also be good given how they lost Struce and Vincent, to like those bench power guys. I think the Knicks would be a good fit, Justin Herbert, but I don't see Leon Rose doing that just because of the age and contract and what we would have to probably give up for him. Um, but I think that the Heat and the Bulls are probably the two that make the most sense in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
I agree with that. I like the Celtics as well. I just don't know what they could give in return. Drew Holiday would almost be a perfect replacement for what Marcus Smart brought to that team. He's almost like he's an older version, of course, but it's almost like he's the upgraded. Like he'd be Marcus Smart premium. You get a little bit more offense, at least more consistently, and you have that veteran leadership. So I think if you put Drew Holiday on the Celtics, then that becomes a team, especially if Porzingis stays healthy. It's crazy the way it's almost like like a coaching carousel, but just sort of the top of the Eastern Conference carousel just in this offseason. Like it's oh, the Celtics make this big move early in the offseason. People are like, oh yeah, look at that. They've got a big three now. And almost each month we get a new challenger approaches. And I think Drew Holiday, if he hits at the right spot again, kind of could reshift the balance a little bit at the top. But no, Justin thinks he's coming back home. That is it would if he were a free agent, I think it would be more worth mentioning just because then he'd actually have some say in the matter. But uh, it just we'll see what the trade. I will say I don't have an inkling on like who's in the lead here. I don't know, Keeper. Does your gut? Is there anybody, any of these contenders that are sticking out where you're like, I think these guys are the favorites to get him, or have you heard anything in your circles or seen anything on Twitter that leads you in any direction, or are you as in the dark as I am on this one?
I'm as in the dark as you are on this one. I haven't seen a report that's like blank is nearing an agreement to trade for All-Star guard Drew Holiday. I've seen literally probably the same exact tweet that you just showed. And that's basically about it, I think. I think it's just crazy though, because he said 2 days ago, like he wants to retire a Buck, he wants to be there, and he wants to retire there. And then the next day they like go and trade him.
It's a
um,
brutal business, man.
so that kind of sucks. But I think he's going to be a professional, obviously, and play wherever he ends up. He's not going to leave $70 million on the table. So
For what it's worth, guys, Drew is the only Holiday brother that has yet to play for the Indiana Pacers, so he might be wanting to, collect his blue and gold jersey too. You never know. But like I said, he won't. Not to say he'll have no say in the matter, but it probably won't be very much. Well,
Knicks
while
legend.
I heard I read a tweet, I should say, and this just blew my mind as we've been following the Dame saga throughout this whole thing. I'll drop the Drew Holiday here for a second. I saw a tweet that reported that at one point Dame Lillard went to Portland and said, "If you don't trade me to Miami, I'd rather stay here." And the front office at that point came back to him and said that ship has sailed. And the report stated that Dame was upset at how Portland treated him in that situation. That is baffling to me. Dame seems like that one friend that you stop inviting out to places because like they can never decide what they want to do. You're all trying to pick a spot for dinner, and every place people suggest are like, yeah, no, that doesn't sound good. But when you ask them to pick a place, they won't give you anything. Because he didn't he was waffling all off season. I want to be traded. I don't want to be here. Only trade me to Miami, please. It just seems a little needy is the word I'll use. Keeper, what do you think that is as ridiculous as I thought that he would go back to Portland and say, if you can't send me to Miami, I'll just stay?
Yeah, I mean, he's been saying on like his songs, he was like, I'll still be leaving trails, just not for the Blazers, or something along that line. He's been very childish, I feel like, and his agent has been very childish as well, being like, he's only going to play for Miami if he gets traded. No, he's gonna play with Giannis. In my opinion, a top 25 player of all time in the NBA. But it's just like I, I I don't know. It's just weird to talk about because it's like you burned all your bridges and then you're trying to rebuild it yourself without like a construction team or finances to do so. Um, and then that's what you're left with. So I'm not surprised that the Blazers just shipped him off. I would have done the same thing if I was their GM, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at that point, what are you going to do? Just relive this drama every offseason if it doesn't work? There was a time where I was 100% team Dame on this, and I thought that Portland had screwed up. It's worth noting they've had some bad luck with injuries. It hasn't all been that they've just poorly managed this. They've had a run of bad luck injuries going back to Greg Oden and Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy more so. I mean, that was a guy could have been a perennial all-star. And so but once we got here, you do actually you have the potential to have a bright future, and you can't get put in a spot where I love Dame, but this isn't like a LeBron situation of 10 years ago where you could really bank on throwing a few bodies around him and he'll carry you to a conference finals. So you can't let him hold you hostage in this situation and blow up the chance that I mean, this is a team. I look at this young roster and I think three, 4 years, they could be a real legitimate playoff contender in the West, where some of these other good teams are old.
Yeah.
What will the Lakers be in 3 or 4 years? I don't see LeBron playing that much longer. And look at the Warriors and how old they're getting. Some of these teams won't be in, and the Blazers could be on a better time frame now. Moving on, I think they were right to move on. And once you get to a point where these things are happening, I think it was what had to happen. Shaden Sharp stock is on fire. Oh yeah, I'm telling you to hammer that, Nate. Once we get time, pretty soon we'll be talking about some fantasy basketball. It's almost that time.
Wait, let me see if I can find it. I should be able to find it rather quickly.
Yeah.
Not to whatchamacallit, poke fun at what Justin Herbert said about Barrett and Quickly to the 76ers. You don't want either one of them, but Harden's not the star that we're gonna trade for if we do end up trading for one of your star players, to say the least.
Ooh, it's the old Embiid, which, oh, Justin might get mad, and I'll just keep this in my pocket, or it might be involved with what you're about to talk about. Also, Lee, I agree with this.
Yeah,
2 to 3 years, 100%. I think the Thunder will be right up there. They are so much fun. What was it? City Sissoko? Who is that? No, who was the? I'm thinking of somebody else. Their first round pick, they got Belial Kulabi. That guy could be a pretty freakishly good athlete. And then they still have Chet Holmgren, who hasn't played yet. But sorry, I stepped all over your Embiid trade. Ooh, oh,
that's what I was going for. The Shaden Sharp out of 75 rookie card. So
oh.
I'm holding on to that. But yeah, no. About the Embiid, he's like the only realistic option for us at this point. If Harden's gonna keep doing the BS that he's doing, and the 76ers falling short of doing something every single year, I think he's just getting fed up. And he's been seen with trainers in Knicks gear. He has close ties to Randall and Brunson, even though Randall would probably be shipped off in that. Hey, listen, I'm fine with giving you guys RJ, Randall, Fournier, Grimes, and like 4 first-round picks. Like, I'm not opposed to giving you guys a haul.
And there's a wheelbarrow full of money in the back alley too,
Yeah,
probably, right? Like, to get Embiid, you'll take it. It's worth mentioning, and I don't know how serious this is, but again, the rumor mill is firing up that he's now that this has happened, he's putting pressure on management for the Sixers to go get somebody. So maybe they'll be selling or buying before they're selling, but if they don't, yeah, maybe he'll be the next big star asking to move.
yeah, I hope so. We kind of need him.
Oh, he plays with Tatum every year. She's going to the Celtics now too. Oh, yeah. Hey, you know, I don't think that one would play out, but it is interesting that yeah, there's a lot more. We didn't have that as much back in my day as a 90s kid watching the NBA. You didn't hear about all these guys that would work out together in the summer. The idea of Charles Barkley working out with Michael Jordan in the offseason. It's quite laughable. There's a different level. It's more of a brotherhood now, I would think, in a sense of like these guys actually get to know each other, earlier in life, and they actually hang out in the offseason, which makes it easier for us to speculate and lob some tampering allegations. Keebler, did you see that not
Yeah.
only Jimmy Butler, but also Tyler Hero have accused the Bucks of tampering? Not, we didn't hear it from them. I'm so sorry. I wasn't supposed to say that, but I didn't hear it from Jimmy Butler, but I did see him say it on a video. What are your thoughts there? Any truth to that, or is this just sour grapes from Miami?
I think he was just joking, to be honest with you. Um,
Fair. I did. Yeah, fair.
it seemed like a very joking matter, but if Tyler Hero is trying to like play tough and be like, "Yeah, do it," I don't know. I don't think that there's anything that would come out of that, and I don't think there's really anything to it, in my opinion.
No, you might be right because Tyler Hero went on a bit of a troll session because they were making memes about Tyler Hero safe for now, and then he quote tweeted it and said until next year with a crying emoji and then a peace sign, and then after it all, he quoted out. He said, "In all seriousness, though, as a kid from somewhere, I'm definitely buying a Dame Bucks jersey or something." So after all of the joking, he did kind of let it known that he wasn't that serious. But Miami Heat fans, however, are kind of serious, some of them, with their disdain for one Mr. Pat Riley, because I mean, he's got quite a reputation as being a deal maker, as being one of the greatest minds in the game. He was a player, he was a championship coach, he's a championship general manager. But now, after several misfires at trying to add a big name to this roster, people are starting to look at that history a little differently. And I don't know if you've seen this rant from a Twitter space that basically said Dwayne Wade deserves all the credit for bringing LeBron and Bosh to Miami, and therefore that Pat Riley really deserves no credit for anything that's happened in Miami. And they're downright calling him out at this point, saying he's not good. He is screwing this up. What are your thoughts on that? Is there like are they on to something there? Does Pat need to step away, or are the Heat gonna put this together and bring a star into this roster?
Well, there was a report that Pat Riley never picked the phone back up and like tried to make a better offer for Dame. It was just like the original offer and just left it on the table. So that was giving teams like the Raptors and Bucks time to, you know, battle for Dame essentially. But you know, I agree. I think as a GM, LeBron kind of made his career. Um, D Wade too, obviously, because he had to recruit for him. But yeah, no, I don't think Pat Riley himself has really done much to basically, what am I trying to say? Basically get credit as a GM. And yeah, he's like a grandpa. He's in his 70s. I don't think that he should be working for a front office anymore. Um, that's just where I'm at with it. How about you?
I don't necessarily disagree. Now, the one place where I am going to give Riley credit was he was right about Eric Spolstra. Players came into his room or into his office and said, "You need to get rid of this guy," and he said, "No." And I think that was an incredibly intelligent move. We talked about it a lot in the playoffs last year. I think as far as in-game adjustments and in a playoff series, game-to-game adjustments, Eric Spolstra is top 3 in the NBA. He might be. I mean, last year in that playoff run, he was at the top of my list, but I'll admit to some recency bias. I'm only human, so I'll just say comfortably, he's, in my opinion, as far as adjustments goes, he's a top 3 coach. When I look at what Miami's been able to get out of their undrafted and second round talent. But again, I give that credit to Spolstra. I don't really give that credit to Riley because after a certain point, yeah, you're finding a couple of gems, but could it just be that you have a really good coach who's maximizing the capacity of these players that otherwise? And then you look at guys like Duncan Robinson and you wonder like how much like is he really good?
Well,
And so, or did you just pay him a lot?
there was also reports that like Spo just like goes to the local YMCA and like scouts for talent there. Um, and it wasn't
You rightly.
it wasn't like joking either. Like he goes to the local YMCA and tries to see what talent's there. So I feel like when you have
Wow.
that, and then especially with the team that they probably have analytically on some of these players, what they're good at, what role that you should have them in, I feel like that he does a very good job, like you said, at like maximizing their potential.
Yeah, but other than that, yeah, at a certain point, they also brought in Kyle Lowry, and I think even casual NBA fans would have told you like there wasn't much tread left on those tires. So what was really the point? Right before that, they did the same by bringing Dragic in. Um, he has also been the benefit of some behemoth efforts from Jimmy Butler. Like how much have just Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo going on a couple of runs made this franchise look better than again it might be. We've got that wild run in the bubble and then last year's. And again, a lot of that is coaching. And the one year that they did have a 1 seed, they, that that they were tops. The sandwich year in between, they weren't very good. So I'll take that. Justin's just really trying to get at you now. Reggie Miller over Pat Ewing. Pat Ewing probably over Rick Smits, but a 9-year-old me never would have admitted that. So yeah, Pat Riley, I think his time might be done, but I am starting to buy into this idea that a myth has been made about the elusive Pat Riley. Maybe it's been a little more sizzle than steak after all these years. That revisionist history. It's making a lot of sense to me. And now we'll see how much longer he's at the helm. But
It's almost as
is the
bad. The myth is almost as bad as the Jordan era physicality myth.
Oh yeah. Oh, you gotta love that one. Mm-hmm.
I just watched a compilation of like fouls that were on Jordan that not even LeBron has gotten in his career. Of just like he'll like go to sidestep, barely get touched, like barely swiped, just pump fake a shot, and then the ref will be like, "Yeah, you said it was a foul, so I called a foul." Like,
Yeah. Not to mention all the offensive fouls that didn't get called. Like, as much as we love that flu game, like the farewell shot over like that was an offensive foul if I have ever seen one. Like
yeah,
he pushed off dude so hard. And yeah, no, there were certain teams, I think if you wanted to talk about the late 80s as being a more tough and I don't even think it was just dirty. Like you just had certain teams or certain players, you had the Pistons clothesline and folks, but it wasn't like on a play. It wasn't every single play was football. It was still basketball at its heart. Just a thing. The the times change and then people hate it. Reggie Miller got mentioned in chat. So, I can't pretend like I don't watch the modern game and get angry that players not, in my opinion, that aren't quite near the level of Reggie Miller that are smashing his records just because teams shoot 43s a game now. Like I love Buddy Hield. It blows my mind that he now has the Pacers single season 3-point record. Like it doesn't make sense to me that Reggie Miller that he wouldn't have that record, but the game was played at a much different pace. And when he was playing and those teams were making the playoffs, they were scoring like 87 points a night.
exactly.
They were grinding it out against the Pistons. It was just a different time. So it's really, I love the comparisons for a good debate as long as they stay fun and people don't take them too seriously. But that's my thing. You can't take them too seriously. You can't just pluck these guys out of the vacuums that are the style of the time and say, oh, Jordan would do this to LeBron would do this to Jordan. Like, I don't know. It's way more complex than that. But I honestly, I don't understand that argument. It's just things were better back in my day, right? It's just that unwillingness to accept. Like, is anybody still arguing that Brady's not the GOAT? Like, at what point do we say, all right, yeah, it's LeBron? Yeah, like he didn't win all his titles, but is it going to be after 22 seasons we're going to say, yeah, he's currently the top guy? I don't know. Do you have that? Is LeBron Keebler, where's LeBron on yours? Is he are you a Jordan guy or do you have LeBron in
LeBron's
your
top two, and he's not two. Um, I mean, hot take that we can get into on another episode because I can argue this for literally like 3 hours, and I'm a little too tired today. But I don't even have MJ top two. I have him at number three, personally.
Oh, do
Yeah,
you have who is number 2?
Lou Alcindor.
Ooh, I love that. Okay.
So I prefer basically to highlight it. I like dominance over a very long period of time rather than like a peak 6 years or whatever, because Jordan fans like to think that his career was 6 years long.
Mhm.
Um, like the 2 3-peats, but they
Yep.
don't mention the 7 years or the 7 first years when he literally barely made it out of the first round. Um,
Yep. That
got
that is a good point. Yep.
got swept twice also without Scottie Pippen, but Scottie Pippen also led in every other statistical category outside of points per game in the playoffs on about 1,500 less shots. So it's wherever you want to give credit. But yeah, no, I have Kareem number 2, LeBron 1, MJ 3, Duncan 4, Shaq 5.
I like that. Okay, and I'm just gonna jump on because it took a lot. You're talking about a man who was raised in the Midwest, spent some early years in living in a suburb of Chicago. I read Michael Jordan's biography several times. Like I was a Pacers fan, but I was still raised in the '90s in Chicago. It was impossible to get away from it, and my dad was a Bulls fan, so it took me a while to come over to the other side. Like I was on the team Jordan early on because again, when I watched those games, I hadn't even hit puberty yet, so I wasn't watching the game with any depth either. I was just seeing the highlights and oh wow, Michael's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, some of the biggest shots in those title runs were shots hit by John Paxson, by Steve Kerr. That's the other part. It's not to say that he
Scotty
wasn't clutch. Yeah,
occasionally.
yep, Scotty. So, there is a lot more that goes into it. But yeah, for me, I'm with you. I would have to. I haven't put together a top five like that. I like the idea of having Kareem up there. Very few players have the game's rules changed for them to try to contain
Yeah.
them, and to have the dunk banned from basketball as a way to try to keep Lou Alcindor from dominating the sport. That's something. And for him to still, as an old man with no knee cartilage or ankle cartilage, go out there and be a captain of a Lakers team and you know develop an unblockable hook shot so that way even when he couldn't dominate you with his physical skills he was still deadly in his late or in his 30s. It was crazy what he was able to do, so I love that. I will get a top five ready for you guys for a future episode, and then we'll talk about that if we make some time for it next week. We can get James's top five. We'll see. Yeah, he's traveling, so I know he's probably like, "Why are you giving me more work to do, man? Stop it." But Eric Snow over Jeremy Lin. All right,
Hey, hey,
that's probably a
Jeremy
great
Lin's a
take.
champion 2019 with the Raptors. I will say that.
That's
He didn't
right.
he didn't contribute much, but, like, he's a champion. So, he had that 2-month span with the Knicks where he was Jesus.
Gotta love good old Lynn Sanity. Man, Eric Snow, what a name drop. One of the many failed attempts by that poor Sixers team to try to put a pass first point guard next to Allen Iverson. I remember Aaron McKee, they kept going for these like taller point guards to pair with Iverson. I'm sure Herbert can throw out a few other names, but yeah, they bunch of different guys they tried. Eric Snow, what a blast from the past. Well, Keebler, we are crawling up to that hour mark. I've got the only what was it? Denzel Valentine. Who is that? What was the team? Not who is that, but somebody signed his G League rights. I'm gonna pull that up. I think that was
Was
the
it
only other
the
thing I had.
was it the Raptors?
Raptors. Yep, the Raptors have acquired Denzel Valentine's G League rights. So he was a guy. Talk about Lynn Sanity. That's kind of what reminded me that I even had this as a backup topic on the docket. He kind of had some, maybe not quite to the same extent, but there was a time, there's a short period. Denzel Valentine was looking like a player for the Bulls. Any thoughts on this? Is this you think he's got a chance to do anything, add any value to the Raptors squad?
Well, yeah, this obviously makes the Raptors, like, heavy favorites for the championship, completely transforming their roster. Um, no, I mean, if it's just G League rights, I don't think it's gonna do much. I don't think you'll see much of the roster. It's cool because I did like him when he was in Chicago. I thought he was a serviceable guy, could get the job done, if you needed
Yeah.
him to, but I don't know. I think if they're just acquiring his G League rights, maybe they'll put him on a two-way contract, maybe bring him up, but I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. I don't know how old he is now, but obviously a little older.
Yeah, exactly. No, now we now know why Toronto didn't pull the trigger on a Dame Lillard trade because they had this in the oven warming up. But no, I'll be rooting for him. I'd love to see him make a team, and yeah, I just felt like a good fit. It was like, well, speaking of the Raptors and guys that used to have a spot in the league, we've got Denzel Valentine. Hopefully, he'll get another crack, but. That puts us right there. We've hit an hour. We're blessed by the basketball gods to have this Dame Lillard trade to talk about this week because it had been kind of a slow week up until then. So thank you, basketball gods. Thank you, everyone who has tuned in. Thank you to those who commented as well. Keebler, was there anything that I missed? Anything that you've got on the docket that you want to talk about before we sign off?
I don't really have anything. But if we are signing off, um, if you want places to know where to find me, over on X and Twitter, the Nick Stop right here. Monday nights at 7 o'clock, I think is going to be my target for Monday night to get my Monday night football picks out there. Um, Sports Junkies podcast here on Bite Size Sports Network at 7 p.m. And then Tuesdays, Necessary Roughness at 9 p.m. I know that we took a small break 2 days ago, but we will be back on Tuesday when John is back. And that's about it on my end.
Fantastic. Yes. And of course, also right here on The Bounce, Thursdays at 9:05, depending, with James. James should be back with us next week. And speaking of James, you can also find James and I talking about Star Wars on our sister network, Dweeb, where we have our final episode of the Ahsoka series to review. So that's coming out next Wednesday. Then we'll talk about the whole series, James and John and I, the following week. So check us out Wednesdays at 9. I'll be here Thursday nights on The Bounce at 9. I hang out with Keebler on Mondays, Sportsbook Junkies, usually for the first half, because then I got to hop on over to Carnage Media and talk to some fighters on Carnage Unleashed. We also have a pay-per-view this Saturday, so go check that out on Twitter at Carnage Media PPV. If you want to see the tickets, go check us out. Carnage Fight Series 3 this weekend. They have two. This is old school, Keebler. They're going back to like UFC 1. We have two title tournaments. There's a 145 and a 155 belt. There's a 4-man tournament on one side, an 8-man tournament on the other side. The 8-man tournament, the final will be on a different night, but there's going to be multiple fighters fighting twice this Saturday. So, and that's not even including our main event where we have another belt on the line. So it's going to be a wild night. So I'll cut it short there. You can also find me on Bite Size Colts right here on this network. But I will spare you guys any more of listening to me talk, because you've been with us for 62 minutes. We appreciate it so much. Until next time, y'all take care of yourselves.
Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe.
Ooh, thank you.